I want to keep this one short, but basically, so yeah, no, we'll keep it short and concise.
Okay.
So this is take 13 of the Dormant Dynasty comeback video. I'm here once again with my cousin Vinny, who's been here for practically all of them. So once again, sorry cousin Vinny for having to bring you back.
It's not like I had anything else to do.
It's a good thing you're on payroll now, because I don't have to feel as bad. But if it makes you feel any better, nobody's been cut for more Dormant Dynasty video content than I have.
Right? Oh, okay.
And we've been doing a lot of attempts at this comeback video, but I feel like we haven't really captured, I don't know, the moment. Well, I feel like there's more I want to say each time, so that's why.
Are you collecting all these old videos and then piecing them together, or they just didn't work out?
We'll see.
This is like more reshoots than Have you seen the New Mutants? This originally was supposed to come out in 2018, but they kept refilming it. They changed director, and then it's like, let's get everybody back together and then refilm it again.
Yeah.
So it finally came out in 2021, I think.
And how did it turn out?
It was terrible. It was the most pointless thing. Everybody kept trying to make it better and better, and it didn't work.
Well, I have a feeling about this one that it might be terrible. So I'm thinking of calling this one Where We've Been and Where Do We Go? And when I say we here, I kind of mean it in both senses. It's both we as in the proprietors of this YouTube channel, but also the larger, broader we, the we as in regular viewers of this channel and channels like this, you know, the we, the dissident right, if you will. Whenever I look back on the channel, where we started and where we are now, I always get a little bit, not only nostalgic, but what do you call it? Analytical, I don't know. Okay, so let me just do a quick recap of where we've been, because not very many people know yet that I'm actually starting a new YouTube channel called Iron Age Archive.
But you haven't put it on this channel, so like your viewers from this channel haven't moved over yet.
Exactly. And so I'll do a quick recap of what's been going on in my, 20-month absence or something. When I think about where we've been in the last 5 or so years, I think of it as a journey of unconcealment. And I think I mean this in the same sense that Heidegger means this, in that the anti-SJW moment created a clearing in the woods. And through that clearing was where we began to gather to see the world from a new perspective. Right? Because a lot of us weren't that interested in politics, didn't know what Marxism was. We just wanted to play video games, right? FFS. We came to this clearing and the world revealed itself to us in a new way. And I think with the nature of clearings, what happens is that every time more objects reveal themselves in the clearing, they kind of enlarge the clearing in some areas and maybe even collapse the clearing in other areas. There's an interaction between objects and clearing. You know, many of our viewpoints today are very different from our viewpoints when we started this political exploration 6 years ago.
6 years is a long time in the political sphere.
It's funny though, right? I think it's a very short amount of time, relative to a lifetime for sure. 6 years is 1.5 election cycles in the US.
Yeah.
And it's insane to think how much political landscape seemingly has changed in that time.
Yeah. I was reading someone wrote on Twitter, this is a celebrity of some sort, but it's like, I haven't become right, I have just stood there, and then everything else has become left.
But I wonder if that's true or not, because you have to self-reflect and see if your own views changed. Because my views have certainly changed. I've certainly gone. And I think right and left is one way of describing it, but something else revealed itself to us over time in this clearing. But let me go back to the clearing for a moment. And I maybe people don't really know what I mean by clearing. The metaphor here is a clearing in the forest, right? And the clearing in the forest allows objects to kind of enter into the clearing where they can unconceal themselves. And as the clearing moves, as the clearing shifts in shape, it grows larger and collapses in other areas, we also decide where in the clearing we want to stand. So going back 6 years ago, it was a libertarian moment. Everybody was pro-free speech. Everybody was concerned about what was happening in terms of where cancel culture and things like that was going. But as this social and political force that was revealing itself to us revealed more, we kind of started to see that it wasn't just blue-haired college students that we were up against. We were up against some broader ideological movement that included intersectional feminists and Marxists and so on. And then over time, again, more of the clearing opened up and we began to see another angle, which was this elite power structure, this deep state combined with moneyed power, banking elites, cultural institutions, NGOs, etc. And then that continues to reveal itself. And then there's also this religious angle, this Luciferian impulse that kind of grips us. And even in a Heideggerian sense, there's this enframing that technology does to us that drives us towards these Luciferian impulses. And so what we started was anti-SJW, and where we end up is a broader clearing where we can actually stand in different places and see it from different angles. And so where we are now is many of us are standing in different places. And once again, I'm talking about not just the broader sphere of right-wing thought, but also in the microcosm sense, me and Bill, right? We did start in the same clearing, and then we refuse to kind of meet each other in the middle of the clearing now. Because actually we're really, really far apart.
When was the last time you talked to him?
I believe it was April of 2020.
Okay.
And I remember it being around that time because around that time was, I think the World Economic Forum first put out that video about you'll own nothing and be happy. It was also around that time where everybody was realizing, oh, the second biggest funder of the WHO is Bill Gates. And I remember going to Bill and saying, hey, isn't this interesting? And he's like, no, I don't care. So that was us refusing to meet in the middle.
You haven't talked to him in 2 years. Like maybe he has changed too, right?
It's possible. And I think maybe there's some opportunities to reconnect, but we'll see. But okay, so this is one thing that I want to get to. It's something that we talked about in Take 12, which is...
You could have put out 12 videos by now. Instead, you want the perfect one.
Well, I don't know if we've actually done 12.
Oh.
I've lost count.
I think it's pretty close. What happened to him? Just let us know.
But this is uneven yoking, right? So quick update, I've become a Christian recently, and that's probably driven my viewpoint and Bill's viewpoint even further apart. But being that far apart in worldviews, we were also rather somewhat apart in terms of what we were doing for the channel. You know, Bill had been talking for a long time about getting a new computer and being more involved, going on Discord, interacting with the community, or sometimes I would send him videos or articles and, you know, he's like, oh, I can't open this on my computer or something. So
was he running freaking Windows 3 or something? Like, is he working with DOS?
He was running the prototype out of Bill Gates' garage.
He's Team Gates.
So yeah, there's this uneven yoking, and it means when two oxes of different strength are trying to pull the same yoke, they're trying to pull the same load, and one ends up pulling a lot harder, and then the thing can't go straight. That kind of very aptly describes what went on with this channel when we decided that it wasn't going to work, at least for now. And so when you're onto a new way of viewing the world and you're trying to present some of those viewpoints, it's very difficult when the other person that you're cooperating with is trying to pull you in another direction, I guess you could say. But yeah, I think, once again, this is a microcosm because in the larger context, I see this happening in a lot of different places. So where we were once kind of like, at least we agreed on certain things that allowed us to coexist in the same space. Now we've kind of, you know, the people who aren't Christian will say, oh, you Christians are losers. You don't know how to win a political war or something. And for us, we're looking at the last 2,000 years, which everybody recognizes as a Christian world. And we're saying, what are you talking about? So there's all of this inability to pull in the same direction anymore.
No center.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm hearing this for the 5th time.
Yeah.
Instead of the fight, you can build your own community, right? And then go from there.
Yeah, but... okay, so one of the things that I'll say is that no matter how much infighting that happens between us, there is still a certain bond that exists, that might always exist. And this is something that we talked about in Take 11, where Or it might have been take 12, I don't know. The hobbits were friends before they set out on their adventure.
Oh, yes.
Or yeah, the hobbits in Lord of the Rings. They were friends, but by the time they had completed their journey, they were brothers. And so I think in our broader internet community, despite how many of us are now pulling in different directions and not very happy with one another, there still is a brotherhood that formed over the previous 5 years. So we'll get to where we go from here, I guess.
Well, it goes beyond that. When you see Fast and Furious, first one, at the end of the first one, they became brothers and then they separated. And in Fast and Furious 3, they came back together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, actually. It's that there's these different chapters in life. And even Bill has talked about this before, where he describes it as 7-year phases, where there are these 7-year chapters in his life where he has this group of friends and then it changes and then sometimes it changes back. And it's just, I think that's just life. It's not necessarily a bad thing either, actually. And you look at who some of my best friends have been recently, they've been my high school friends again.
Absent for 7 years.
Yeah.
14 years.
So it's really interesting where life takes you, the kind of plans that God has for you.
When you try to piece your own journey or your own movie, it has to be in acts, right? Or else you have a very static story.
Yeah.
So you think of it in this sense, a plan is designed for you to have acts and changes throughout your history, or else if you had a static 50 years, it'd be the worst story ever, right?
Yeah. Even though when the protagonist is going through those all is lost moments, they don't like it, but this is how heroes' journeys work. So let's get to where do we go from here? So we've been through the clearing, we've been through seeing the world from changing perspectives. We've been through now a point where many of us are trying to pull in different directions. You know, there are these kind of realpolitik people who are saying, let's freaking go already, right? Let's get some kind of right-wing revolution happening. And then there are these Benedict option people. Oh, let's find a 50-acre plot somewhere and, build Trumptonshire. And then there are the Christians who are saying, you all have to recognize that this is about Satanism. You'll have to recognize that it's not just something political. There's clearly a spiritual aspect here. And there are the pagans who are saying, paganism is the true religion of our ancestors. What is this desert cult?
Everybody thinks the other cult's crazy. The Spider-Man meme where they're pointing each other.
Yeah. That's basically where we're at right now. We're at the Spider-Man. So where do we go from here? For me, I've made 3 notes here. 1 is regarding the hero's journey and the call to adventure. 2 is regarding unity and faith. And 3 is also about the hero's journey. Okay, so there's this new act, or there's a new chapter happening before us. And we can't keep looking at it as, I wish we could go back. I know the audience wishes that we could go back to the Asian capitalist days and just laugh at culture war stuff. But that was the first movie in the trilogy or something. Now we can look forward to the sequel.
A lot of Star Wars fans will not enjoy that reference.
So we had this brotherhood that formed over the anti-SJW and Trump era. Now there's kind of a new set of heroes that are going to come along. And I think there's a lot to look forward to, actually. And on the personal scale, that is my new YouTube channel, Iron Age Archive. And Iron Age Archive isn't just a YouTube channel, it's also a website. We also have a Substack newsletter that Cousin Vinny here is...
pour my heart and soul
into
it. I hope people read it.
Yeah, he's our only paid writer on staff, so putting a lot of work into our newsletter. And what I'm doing is I'm finding the other Ox who want to pull in the same direction. Because on this YouTube channel, it was always me doing all the editing. Not to say that Bill didn't contribute a lot to the channel. Of course he did. But it wasn't an even pulling between the two Oxes. One of the early disagreements that we had, maybe in 2017 or 2018, was when I started getting interested in reactionary ideas, and I was trying to incorporate more of that into the content. So we started talking about bio-Leninism, we started talking about political trichotomy, a couple of lesser ideas until I started really getting into it. And at the time, one of the disagreements that Bill and I had was that Bill wanted to keep it light and about culture war. And I was interested in these other ideas. And that's when the uneven yoking really began to manifest itself.
Bill's a very pop culture guy too, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I understand where he's coming from, because I'm huge into pop culture.
Yeah.
And when you start getting into underlying themes, it really becomes less enjoyable, I guess, or digestible.
Yeah.
I remember talking to my friend. He loved Pacific Rim, and I just going through it from a movie analysis point, from plot to character development. It's the worst movie ever. My friend's like, robots. So it's like there's that divide, you know, people who want the entertainment and who want the just surface level fun and the glitter and gold. And then there's the people who want the themes and the aura and the underlying feeling behind it. And the aura group is really hard to digest because you need a certain set of background behind it, right?
Yeah.
Bill probably does have a bit of that background because he's been hanging out with you for so long, but it's not fun for him. I guess that's where the headbutting really came, when it no longer became fun. And he kind of felt betrayed by that friendship too, right? Because you guys were friends, and friendships share a different thing than work colleagues.
Yeah.
Where work colleagues have a goal you have to kind of meet, production, and then you traded friendship for that.
Yeah, I think that did really complicate things because this YouTube channel started off as merely friends chatting it up. And then we started gaining traction. And then I felt like we owed something to the audience because people were coming to us they were coming to us for entertainment, but also a certain level of analysis. And I wanted to do my best there. But there is this very difficult balance. You don't want to be too far in one direction or the other, even though I think in a way we also kind of do.
The group you have now definitely suits more of what you were going for. And I think you'll be happier here. I think Bill jumping into this Iron Age, like if he ever did, it would be torture for him.
Maybe, yeah. So yeah, Iron Age Archive, link in the description. You know, there's a new call to adventure, basically. And of course there are YouTube channels, even in this sphere, that are not so much about the fun, but more about the raw content, the raw ideas. I love those channels personally, but not everybody does. And I certainly do want to bring a balance. I don't want it to be all one way or the other. Secondly, one of the things, you know, we've already touched upon is there is this disunity, this discord, if you will. And that's once again a call to adventure, because it's nice when you find people who are with you, you know?
You're not alone.
And being somebody who resisted Christianity for a very long time, I also understand where people are coming from. And you know what they say about the internet is that there's a community for everybody. And so I encourage everybody to kind of find their own tribe and to be united. And I wrote here, humble in service. And, you know, in a Christian context, we obviously understand what it means to be humble in service. But even in a non-Christian sense, I think one of the things about the internet that we've been dealing with is that everybody doesn't know how to submit to something greater than themselves. And so there's always been this constant self-aggrandizing, maybe. And so I just think at the end of the day, everybody's kind of looking for a higher calling. And for you to truly have a calling higher than you, that means you have to submit yourself to it. So it can't just be this thing where you're willing to just throw people under the bus and you're willing to walk away if it doesn't suit your needs.
In a true hero's journey, every great hero has to submit to something about themselves. In the beginning, they were naive, they're arrogant, and then the final act is when it is something bigger than themselves, it's
Right.
wrong about themselves.
This other example that I can think of is Prometheism. I don't think I've sent you the Prometheus Manifesto to
I'm
read.
not reading 5,000 pages.
But the Prometheus Manifesto is all about, oh, you are the Ubermensch. We are the Ubermensch. When the elites come for us, we will jujitsu their move and turn it back around on them. And we will become the new race of robot warrior kings. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but this is kind of what that Luciferian impulse is. It tells you exactly, oh, you are the master of the universe. You can apotheosize and become God and all this kind of stuff. So I think that there has been a lack of humility that's been exacerbated by the internet, in that we all think we're the next great revolutionary. And that's not always necessarily true, right? Some of us are just normal people, regular.
Most of us,
Yeah.
normal people.
And we've turned away from that idea. And people are just, they kind of cringe at the idea that, oh, I'm just a regular dude who's not going to be a part of the next great revolution or something.
I think the problem with a conservative life, whenever I talk to people, it's like, oh yeah, what would be so bad about, growing your own crops or moving on into a secluded place? And it's like, do you want to use leaves as toilet paper? Do you really want to go back to that time? I was like, even the villagers in China have Wi-Fi now, right? We're not going back to freaking shitting in a hole kind of thing, right?
But to that point actually brings us to my next point, which is that there is one thing that I think Academic Agent got wrong in terms of Trumptonshire. Well, one main thing. And one thing that me and some of my co-collaborators at Iron Age Archive probably disagree on, which is the aesthetics of the quiet life. Because this is something that Bronze Age Pervert talks about too, which is that young men have the call to adventure. They have this primal energy that's always been with us probably. And the release for the primal energy, the call to adventure, used to be hunting when we lived in hunter-gatherer societies. And then as we became more civilized, it used to be war. And now in modernity, in the sedentary life, it's very difficult to find a release for that need to explore and that need to venture out. And I don't think Trumptonshire or the rural life offers that. No. And if anything, the urban life actually offers that. And this is another point by BAP, is that the urban life actually offers more adventure for the young man than the rural life does. Because at least in the urban life, there are these pockets of unknown space.
Sin cities.
And unfortunately, a lot of that are places of a lot of sin and degeneracy. But even in my personal experience, in terms of meeting like-minded people, in terms of collaborating on projects, this is all stuff that I've found very easy to do, even in a very progressive city, that I don't think would have been nearly as easy to do
in Trumptonshire.
Yeah.
You could talk to your postman about it. He'll be like, I'm just here to deliver mail.
Yeah. So you can't tell a bunch of 20-year-olds that, hey, you can be the mailman, you can be the guy who puts up posters, and that's going to be your job for life, and you better enjoy it, damn it, because you're serving the community. I mean, that's aesthetically, that's not really going to work. So the first generation who goes to Trumptonshire and builds Trumptonshire, that's actually an adventure. Yeah. I'll grant them that. But the second generation is going to flee, unless you say, okay, these are the rites of passage in Trumptonshire. When you reach the age of 19, you venture out, and every year you're going to venture out and do this thing, or go on this mission, expedition, etc. Otherwise, why do young people flee the rural small town for the big city? It's the call to adventure. It's a primal theme, and this is something that writers, we always talk about, the primal theme, the primality.
It's Pokemon. Here's a rat. Head up to the next 8 cities. These are 8 cities you have to go to and have a good time. And when you come back, I'll cook you dinner, right?
Yeah. There's a reason why, Frodo and Mr. Frodo and Sam and, there's a reason why Ash Ketchum, they don't stay in every RPG that you've ever played, right? Yeah. You don't stay in the village.
But the problem is that when you grow up in the city, your primal need forces you to go something beyond. Sure. So if you started at a small town and then you saw Vancouver, it's like, wow, it's huge. I met a lot of flight attendants who came from a lot of smaller towns. They come to take the big job, see the big life, see the world, right? They're like, Vancouver's huge. I was like, no, it's not. It's 1/10 the size of Shanghai, right? They're like 60 stories. I was like, yeah, there's buildings that are taller than that. Yeah. Like, how's this possible?
Another interesting thing. Wow, this is getting long now. Another interesting thing is that I very recently came back from a road trip over to the next province over. I drove from Vancouver to Calgary and made some stops in between. And that's when I really got this thought about the aesthetics. Well, I had it before actually too, but that's when it really kind of hit home for me. A lot of people who don't live in cities, they'll say, oh, how do you live in that shithole type of environment?
The city says the same thing about you. How do you live in the shithole?
But the point that I'm getting at is that not all cities are actually created equal. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to disparage Calgary actually, but you and I are both fairly well traveled. We've seen a lot of the world, and there's a huge difference between Tokyo or Hong Kong or Singapore and Detroit. Mm-hmm. There's actually quite a big difference between Vancouver and Calgary too. And so it's not all the same. And so that's the right-wing talking point. Oh, we all just got to move to the countryside. That's kind of an incomplete analysis, I think. Because I may have talked about this before too, is that in Hong Kong, city of 7 million people, there's still this sense of you go to the same guy in the same wet market for pork, and you go to the same guy in the same wet market for vegetables.
It's an advanced Trumptonshire.
And one of our other collaborators, Cinder Mountain Villager, also mentioned this about New York City as well. It's just that you have a pizza guy, and the pizza guy knows your name, and you know his story. And this happens for some reason in certain cities. And I'm not saying New York City isn't a shithole, because I'm quite certain that it is. But
it happens in certain pockets of the city, though.
Yeah.
So the main downtown core with the financial building, every city in the world, I think, is the same. You get your 4 banks, and then you get your trade center.
Yeah.
But I think in Hong Kong too, Mongkok is where you get the Joe Kanji, Mr. Street Cart. So I guess, would you count Mongkok as the rural part of Hong Kong?
Well, it's not rural in any sense, but at the same time,
it's the rural vibe.
There's some sense of
community.
Community can still form in these places. There's something uniquely North American, actually, I think, about Detroit, about places like downtown Vancouver and downtown Calgary, even. Well, first of all, there are massive drug problems going on. And there's just I think it has to do with architecture as well. Mm-hmm. It has to do with city design.
Geography.
Yeah, and it also has to do with the people. It has to do with the culture, whether they have a sense of tradition. But that's something that needs to be further explored, I think. Because how come in Asian cities of between 7 and 15 million people, there isn't the same degeneracy and dilapidation that has occurred, right?
I think every time you come back from Asia, you learn something new. It's like, when you talk about dystopians, can Brave New World form in any city? Is it a map for any city, or is it just London specifically? Would different cities, mega cities around the world, have enough culture in them to not fall into that same realm of technocracy, right?
Well, I think in the early stages, technocracy will manifest itself in different ways. Mm-hmm. But over time, I do think that our relationship with technology, the enframing, it does have a teleology. And that teleology becomes the mass man and the mass culture. And so I think it's only a matter of time. But right now, there's a different form of degeneracy that's happening in the East Asian megacity, which is, 996? Working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. And that kind of thing is happening. So fertility rates around the developed world are falling, but they're actually falling for somewhat different reasons. In the West, we have a lot more of the cultural degeneracy, but there, it's something different.
The Asians always want kids, but they just can't have them. Yeah. But Western societies,
they don't want
it. They can have kids. It's not that expensive, especially most of Canada. Yeah. But they don't want them. So it's the whole parallel, right?
Interesting, yeah.
But the underlying technocratic design is that you don't have kids.
Yeah.
And then it's up to your city how you want to build this envision that, right?
So the final point I want to get to is related to the hero's journey again. The note that I have here, it's crossing the threshold and bringing back the boon and reconciling the margins. So one of the things that I've noticed is maybe not only on the right wing, it might be on the left wing too, but it's this idea that we can just ignore the margins. So one example is, screw Hollywood. We don't need them. Let's just not watch movies. And this is something that I wrote recently in a Substack post. And this is one of the reasons why I found so much truth in Christianity too. It's that everything is a manifestation of one original order. And so what we might perceive as chaos is really just the margins. This is a very Jonathan Pajot talking point. I'm pretty much ripping him off, but every form of chaos is really just the margins of that order. So chaos and evil exist in this world because God created an order that allowed for chaos and evil to even be possible. God could have created an order where Satan didn't challenge him, right? He could have created an order where we forever stayed in the Garden of Eden, but he didn't. And one of the things that exists in both Christianity and the hero's journey is this idea of reconciling opposites. So it's not that we need to ignore Hollywood and just go away, because Hollywood is a manifestation of the order that we exist in.
It's storytelling.
It ties back to storytelling, and storytelling is how we make sense of the world.
It's just a perversion of it at its most satanic level, I guess.
Everything can actually aim back at the original order, but it's like a shotgun spray where you're going to get the margins.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is that we have to stop thinking about the margins as something that we can ever
Eradicate.
we have to stop thinking of it as that it's completely foreign. The whole theme of Hero's Journey is actually venturing out to the margins, bringing back the boon, and reconciling the two worlds, becoming master of two worlds. That's one of the final steps in Hero's Journey. And so we have to stop looking at leftism, actually, as this us against them. In a certain sense, yes, their trajectory has fallen away from the perfect aim towards order, but we have to find a way to reconcile that. And so this is where I think is the new call to adventure. To tie it back to Christianity, what does it mean to love your enemy? What does it mean to love thy neighbor? The people who are doing chaos and evil in the world right now, at the end of the day, we're all children of God. We're pulling in different directions. There's a lot of animosity. There's a lot of bad stuff happening right now. And loving your neighbor, of course, also means defending them from those who would seek to do them harm or evil, right? So it's not purely this idea that people like to criticize about Christianity, where it's all pacifism and just lay down and let the enemy roll over you. No, love of your neighbor also includes defending your neighbor from harm and evil. But what we're trying to say is that there is this further consideration that the evildoer is also somebody who has fallen victim to evil. They're not only harming another person, they're also harming themselves. And so that's why we have to pray for them, that they will ultimately find redemption as well. And so this is kind of opposed to the approach that we've been taking now, which is to push the two worlds further apart through kind of claiming the other as alien and disconnecting the two worlds and creating this resentment that separates them.
It's also people who do meme culture, war, and all that stuff, they're in there for the addiction. It's no longer revelation of any sort. They're just there to destroy people because they're addicted to the high that it gets.
I think Moldbug has called it power porn or something. It's a dopamine cycle. And so, where do we go from here, right? It goes back to humility too. It's that we're very good at critiquing those who are opposed to us, but once in a while, we have to stop and think about where we're at. And ultimately what it is I don't want people to be miserable anymore. I want people to really find great meaning and great beauty in life. Because I don't think there's a victory that comes at the end of the road of this endless dopamine loop and spiraling downwards. And actually, Zero HP Lovecraft has a really good thread that's related to this. And in it, he says, quote, "I'm not interested in being the king of disaffected losers or in adopting a victim mentality. I am interested in kingship as such, and in agglomerating a new replacement elite, which is to say, an extended circle of friends. As Bap notes, a king can only be understood as the most noble of the nobles, and has meaning and continuity only in a society ruled by nobles." And this kind of ties back to something that happened to me earlier this year, where one of my friends on Discord, Pseudopilled, he got me to join him in this broader book club project, where Pseudopilled has actually started a number of book clubs among different Discord communities, and he got me to start one. And a lot of people, for whatever reason, seem to object to this. They kind of thought the book club was retarded. And yet they still showed up every week at book club just to tell us that it was retarded. And they kind of missed the whole point, which was that it's not about book club, dummies. It's about the friendship that forms around the activity. And clearly, by coming in and disrupting, you kind of showed that you don't belong here. And so that was our way of cultivating a group that gets along. I'm not saying that I have aspirations to be a king or something, but here's an anime reference, I guess. But in the beginning of Death Note, the Shinigami, he's living in this hell world where he's surrounded by all these other degenerate Shinigamis, and all they do all day is throw dice and talk about bullshit. And he was sick of it, right? That's why he threw his Death Note down on Earth, and that's why he wanted to come down to Earth. He was sick of hanging out with a bunch of... I don't mean to be disparaging. I mean, by all means, if you guys want to shitpost all day and throw dice or whatever, I don't care. But I was sick of it. And that's why I left that old Discord community to move to a new Discord community, because that wasn't for me.
The Shinigami is actually a pretty common archetype. The Joker had the same thing too as well. He was sick of the criminals in his circle. You guys are a disgrace to criminals, right? Oh. So remember the scene where he burned the money? Yeah. It's like, I want half. And then the guy's like, what are you doing, right? It's like, you're the kind of person that gives criminals a bad name, right? It's like, you're not in it for the chaos. You're not in it for a purpose, right?
Right.
You're in it for money.
Yeah, you've been territorialized by consumer capitalism.
Yeah. Joker actually has a purpose and a sense of nobility in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, he had a value beyond consumerism. Mm-hmm. And
your typical Gotham criminal, it's just another participant of modernity, right? Mm-hmm. Which makes it so easy to control too as well.
Yeah. And we do hear a lot about the criminal underworld nowadays, which is very much under control of intelligence agencies, and like they don't actually threaten the system, they work with the system. Mm-hmm. And then Zero H.P. Lovecraft goes on to write that friendship is usually served to us as some watered-down pablum for children. And it's something like we play video games together, or in the internet cases, we post memes together, right? And this is in fact a degradation of a noble impulse, which is the impulse to go to war as a band of brothers. So this is what I'm talking about with regards to call to adventure as well. It's that, yeah, we could do the internet thing forever. We could do podcasts forever. We can do memes forever. But in a way, I see potential for more. And that's the call to adventure that I see.
We've taken in many different ways, though, the call to adventure. It could have a nefarious undertone, too, as well.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, terrorism or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess what makes internet trolling so appealing is that it is harmless. And it is non-lethal, and it is irrelevant. So people here right now, they want to be rebellious without having the consequences. No one really gets hurt on internet. You might, I don't know, maybe lose your job or whatever, cancel culture or whatever, but like still nothing that harms your physical.
I'm not saying that we necessarily need to put more skin in the game, although that sometimes can be a good thing. I'm just simply saying that there's more out there for people who want it. And I didn't want to stay in that environment forever.
Is nobility a desirable trait nowadays? I don't believe it has any meaning.
It does, yeah. To the modern man, the word nobility means nothing. Yeah. And to even more, the more cynical types, it means weakness of some sort. It means idealism or romanticism. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a real shame. So H.P. Lovecraft goes on to write, so when people ask, what are we doing here? Why we say what we say? That's why. We are cultivating friendship, incubating a new nobility, from which we hope a king will emerge. I know this sounds grandiose and crazy for many of you, as every grand endeavor must from the outside. And I try not to think of it as grandiose as that, but what I'm suggesting is that it kind of goes back to that hero's journey thing again. Brotherhood over friendship. Brotherhood over acquaintanceship. Because really what the internet is right now is acquaintanceship until you really cultivate the proper, noble manifestation of friendship. And so I guess that really kind of sums up what I'm looking forward to. Cultivating kind of a new, you could say new, but also it refers back to old form. It goes back to the title, where we've been and where do we go from here. The clearing is a lot bigger than where it was. And what I'm saying is we were there and there's more places that we can go. We don't have to stay there. And there were some problems with staying there is what I'm saying. On the right wing, more and more we've been talking about evil. What is evil? What does evil really look like? What is the nature of evil? And that's the question, I think. And And that's something that I really want to address going forward. There are a lot of wrong answers that were presented. There are a lot of correct answers that were presented as well. And what I'm trying to do here, in one sense, is just present where we're coming from, where we're standing in the clearing, and how we're seeing things, which is from this angle, a very Christian perspective. And I'll cover the path towards Christianity in another time. But, that's why I've decided there is another threshold to cross, and I want to cross it with other people who want to cross it with me.
Iron Age Archive.
Yeah. And so, once again, I'm also inviting everybody watching this video to join me over on Iron Age Archive, the YouTube channel, and ironagearchive.com.
Where you can meet Cousin Vinny for the first time.
Oh, one more thing, which is that where does this channel go from here? Because I'm starting a new channel, and there'll still be content on this channel, but there'll also be a lot of crossover content. And I might do a number of clip videos from the other channel, because the other channel has a lot of long form content. We're doing this podcast right now where we analyze the entire Iliad. So it's going to be a 12-part series, each part being about 2 hours. So
24, that's a full day's worth of videos.
Yeah. And the Iliad touches on a lot of these themes, call to adventure and brotherhood, nobility.
Is the Golden Fleece in the Iliad?
No. That's Jason and the Argonauts. Maybe distantly related.
Not Medea. I just think Tyler Perry when I hear Medea.
So yeah, do go over to the new channel, give it a chance, and stick around. There'll be content for this channel as well.
Yo, buddy. Still alive? And thanks, friend. See you again.